A New Jersey boy beaten up by a drunken Mickey Mouse, the extinction of an entire species of bird at Discovery Island, and sex trade workers. So many sex trade workers. Walt Disney World in the 80s was a crazy place, and I'm going to tell you all those stories and more as we take a deep dive into the weird, wild, and just unbelievable stuff that was going on at Walt Disney World in the 1980s. Like any other place with a lot of people, Disney World has its share of accidents, injuries, animal attacks, all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. But not all of it is newsworthy. But the stuff that is pretty wild. So the de facto newspaper of record for Walt Disney World is the Orlando Sentinel. So all the stories I'm going to tell you in this video are sourced from them. So please keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle at all times. Por favor, manténganse alejados de las puertas. And let's get started. Back in the 80s, there were a lot fewer security cameras and seemingly a lot more brazen thieves because reports of robberies at Disney World were rampant. There were surely hundreds of incidents of pickpocketing and petty theft happening every year at the resort, but the most unlikely and shocking robbery happened to Ryan Tramer and his girlfriend Helen Williford, both only 18 years old, on March 8, 1981, when they were robbed on the monorail as it approached the Magic Kingdom. In a train robbery perhaps better suited to Frontierland, the pair were accosted by two men, one of whom had a gun, and were forced to turn over $133 in cash that Tramer had in his wallet, as well as their 2-day passes to the park. The two assailants disappeared into the crowd of vacationers at the Magic Kingdom entrance, after which the couple informed Disney security. Disney gave the couple a replacement park pass, and officials told the Sentinel that this was the first reported incident of guests being robbed on the monorail. Tramer took the incident in stride, telling the Sentinel, "At least I'll go down in Disney history." But not all robbery attempts were as successful as the Great Monorail Heist, however. In August of 1986, a prolific purse snatcher who had previously pilfered more than $11,000 of cash and jewelry from other guests picked the wrong target in 16-year-old Sharon Ann Friedman of Newark, Delaware. When the teen noticed a woman in her late 30s grab her purse that was slung over the back of a chair at a contemporary resort restaurant, she approached the thief and laid her out with a single punch to the face. The teen retrieved her purse and hotel security seized the suspect. She was found in possession of other stolen goods and was handed over to the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Department spokesman Jim Solomons praised the teen's actions, telling the Sentinel, "I think it takes a lot of guts for anybody to confront a criminal." And even Disney itself was often the target of robberies back when it was much more common for guests to pay for goods and services at the parks in cash. Reports were widespread back in the 80s of park eateries being robbed, including an incident in 1986 where the Plaza Pavilion restaurant was robbed by a 19-year-old park employee who donned a mask and brandished a rifle to steal more than $2,000 from the eatery. He was arrested the next day. But the most interesting incident of theft that I could find was from the France Pavilion in Epcot, where a bronze statue of a cherub valued at $450 was stolen from a glass cabinet that was found unlocked. The fate of the statue remains unconfirmed. As a matter of fact, robbery is still rampant at Walt Disney World, what with them charging $3.75 for a bottle of water. Am I right? Am I right, guys? The $450 statue was nothing, however, compared to the $150,299 fine Walt Disney World was forced to fork over to the state of Florida for improperly storing hazardous waste back in 1998. In case you're wondering, that's equivalent to about $391,000 in 2023 dollars. According to the Sentinel, the company left barrels of hazardous waste unlabeled and open behind the China Pavilion in Epcot, and some barrels were found empty and on their sides. Disney agreed to fully clean up all the issues and conduct ongoing testing to ensure groundwater or soil wasn't contaminated. But if you can imagine, that's not even the worst environmental disaster that happened at Walt Disney World, as back in 1987, Discovery Island was the location of the extinction of an entire species of bird. The very last Dusky Seaside Sparrow was found dead in its food dish in its habitat on Discovery Island. The Dusky Seaside Sparrow, once common along the Atlantic coast of Florida, was decimated in the 1950s and 60s after widespread spraying of DDT killed off the vast majority of mosquitoes in the region, which was the sparrow's food of choice. Biologists found only 4 remaining Dusky Seaside Sparrows when they sought to save the species back in the early 80s, but they were all males. The last specimen, named Orange Band, lived to an estimated age of 13 years, which, according to biologists, is extremely long for a sparrow. This extinction hurts almost as much as the extinction of the Beatles, which also happened at Walt Disney World, but back in 1974. It's true. Look it up. If you thought the extinction of the Dusky Seaside Sparrow, or perhaps maybe the Tiki Room, was the worst bird-related travesty to happen at Walt Disney World, let me tell you about the Discovery Island vulture massacre of 1989. So back then, Discovery Island was a zoological attraction that was open to the public, housing a host of exotic and interesting animals for guests to visit. But some of the native species didn't care for the gentrification of their neighborhood, and birds of prey began causing problems for Discovery Island caretakers and animals alike. Over the years, vultures and hawks would attack the exhibition birds, steal their food, and generally make a mess all over the guest areas of the park. Cast members decided to take matters into their own hands. Quite literally, state and federal prosecutors alleged that Disney employees shot hawks, destroyed the nests of invading species, and on more than one occasion, beat vultures to death. A deal was brokered with prosecutors before the case went to trial. Now, even back in the 80s, Disney World was the subject of a ton of lawsuits. The Orlando Sentinel reported in 1981 that in the 10 years since the resort had been opened, it had been sued more than 300 times. Now, most of those were just run-of-the-mill injury-type lawsuits, but some of them were out of the ordinary. In 1986, a New Jersey mom named Paula Makopoulos sued Walt Disney World on behalf of her son Evan, whom she alleges was assaulted by Mickey Mouse in 1983. The suit alleged that a cast member dressed in a Mickey Mouse costume was greeting guests near Cinderella Castle when her son ran up to introduce himself. Paula says Mickey threw Evan up against a metal railing after the boy grabbed the tail of the costume. Worse, Paula claims that she and at least 6 other guests could smell alcohol on the breath of the cast member inside the costume. It was reported that Evan was treated at the park for a cut on his back after the incident. The lawsuit asked for $3 million, or about $8.4 million in 2023, because Evan needed psychological treatment after the incident. Paula's lawyer, Anthony Macri, told the Sentinel Evan idolized Mickey Mouse, and the incident gave him feelings of mistrust, fear, and anxiety that will last the rest of his life. Poor Evan, but at least Kevin Jonas knows how he feels.
You don't fucking talk to me like that, you little piece of shit!
The lawsuit was eventually dismissed by a Florida judge in 1987 after Paula suffered an injury leaving her unable to travel to the Sunshine State to attend any court proceedings. Another lawsuit was filed in New Jersey, but I couldn't find any additional information about that suit. Disney World, for their part, denied all the allegations. Everyone wants to be the first ones to arrive at the Magic Kingdom in the morning for rope drop, but the Windsor family of Lakeland, Florida, were the first guests into the park ever. William Windsor, his wife Marty, and their 2 sons, Jay and Lee, were awarded the honor of being the Magic Kingdom's first family when it opened back in 1971. The family was given free lifetime passes to the park as a reward. What a wholesome family moment, right? No, not at all. William Windsor was a total scumbag. Windsor racked up a hefty criminal record since the day he first walked through the gates of the Magic Kingdom. In the late 1970s, he was arrested and sentenced to probation after embezzling funds from a Polk County construction project, and in 1979 he was forced to repay almost $50,000 to investors for a scam involving worm farms. And in 1988, he spent 8 months in jail and paid $34,000 in restitution for his role in a securities fraud scheme. Now, knowing the kind of man William Windsor is, would it at all surprise you to learn that back in 1991, he admitted that he and his family weren't even the first ones in line at the Magic Kingdom? It turns out that 4 college boys were actually in front of the Windsor family in line, but William and a bunch of other jerks convinced the boys that Disney wanted a family as the first guests, and so the college foursome relented and let the family ahead of them in line. Also in 2003, the SEC seized his assets and liquidated them after he was allegedly the recipient of $325,000 in another fraudulent securities scheme. That last bit's not Disney related, I just thought it was really interesting. Okay, so Disney unknowingly made a terrible choice in their first family for the Magic Kingdom, but there's no way that their selection of a first family for Epcot could have any kind of controversy around it, right? Nope. Epcot's first family was the Carson family of Winter Park, Florida, whose patriarch, Dick, was wearing a bright green shirt that stood out to Jack Lundquist, VP of Marketing for Walt Disney World, who made the selection. Lundquist told the Sentinel that Carson's green shirt, quote, beat out the other eligible families. But Tom Hall, an insurance executive from Melbourne, Florida, told the Sentinel the first family honor should have gone to him, his wife, and their 2 children. Hall said that he and his family were the 3rd family to enter the Magic Kingdom, behind presumably the convicted felon and the 4 college kids, and his family, quote, had a better strategy this time. Hall planned an intricate way of being first in line. While Carson and his family were just leaving their home at 4:30 in the morning, the Sentinel reported that Hall and his family were, quote, already hiding out in the woods. I don't know if that's a metaphor, but either way, this guy had his wife and 2 kids, Heather, aged 8, and Harbor, aged 6, already essentially at Epcot by 4:30 in the morning. After they were passed over, Hall and his family left the park and demanded a refund for their admission. Can you imagine being those poor kids? I mean, your dad drags you out of bed super early in the morning and tells you that you're going to the brand new Disney theme park. And then when you get there and you're not chosen to be the first family, he turns you right around and marches you out and takes you home. I mean, look at this picture of the family in the Orlando Sentinel and tell me that those kids are not just totally done with their dad's shenanigans. Anyway, Hall took his sour grapes and went home, but not before being a total Karen about the whole thing, writing Disney a letter of complaint and telling the Sentinel, if they ignore me, I'll probably sue them for misrepresentation. Just to rub some salt in the wound, here's Dick and his family being interviewed, and yeah, his shirt's pretty green.
Dick, why don't you come up here, Dick, and where are you folks from? Winter Park, Florida. What time did you get here this morning? Well, we got up at 4:30. We got at the parking lot at 6 o'clock this morning, and they wouldn't let us in.
We Disney Parks fans know that the opening of Epcot was a very exciting moment in Disney history, but do you know who else was excited for the opening of Epcot? Sex trade workers. Yes, the month that Epcot opened, the Orlando area and Orange County saw a sharp increase in the number of arrests related to sex work. According to the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation, which is a multi-organization vice group meant to combat human trafficking, the first 2 weeks of October saw a total of 42 women arrested for sex work-related charges. The average number of arrests in a whole month at the time was 25. According to MBI Sergeant Richard Claw, many of the women arrested told officers they were in town to commemorate the opening of Epcot and had come from as far away as Philadelphia to partake in the celebration. Walt had a lot of vision for the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, but oddly enough, sex trade workers never came up. All right, thanks for checking out the video today. Drop a like if you learned something new about Walt Disney World history, and leave me a comment just for the sake of engagement. Now, if you liked this video, get subscribed because I'm working on one just like this one, but for the 90s, and I found hundreds of other amazing Walt Disney World stories that I'm going to share in future videos, and you don't want to miss that, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Until then, I will see you next time. Bye.